Oh dear, oh dear. How delicious. Somebody is going to be strutting around Montecito this morning with a face like a bulldog chewing a wasp. Who's the blonde? Harry, who is that blonde? The white lady. Does she remind you of your mother or something? Don't I do it for you anymore? I might just have to call Nachos Figueres today and see how he is fixed, and see if he is free for a round or two, because I'm in the mood for riding. Yes, one Duchess is not going to be highly amused with the activities of her Duke this morning, is she, my dears? It's the first broadcast of the month, sweet October, how divine. So you know what that means. It's time for me to give you a monthly reminder to subscribe to this channel. Make sure you haven't found yourself accidentally unsubscribed, more to the point. And if you wish to join us here in the fruit basket, then press the button to become a basketeer. Press subscribe. Thank you. First of all, let's celebrate the news that Princess Beatrice of York is with child. The announcement was made by Buckingham Palace today. Her Royal Highness Princess Beatrice and Mr. Edoardo Maplimozzi are very pleased to announce that they are expecting their second child together in early spring, a sibling for Wolfie, aged 8, and Sienna, aged 3. His Majesty the King has been informed, and both families are delighted with the news, and the little bairn is going to be 11th in line to the throne of this kingdom, pushing Princess Eugenie of York into 12th place. And the bairn will be the 14th great-grandchild of the late Queen Elizabeth. Quite a brood, quite a brood. And nothing escapes you. Nothing escapes you, because you spotted this several weeks ago. You never fail to astonish me, as I'll show you again in just a moment with one of your findings. But when this news came into being today, I remembered a comment that one of you left on a video from the 14th of August, when I flashed up some photographs of the Maplemozzis out and about doing some shopping, and they were looking rather casual. Actually, I thought she looked a bit of a state, to be quite honest with you, a little slovenly, but deeply in love as they are. You know, they're a very sweet couple, aren't they? Well, one of you said, J. McD, all this time ago, you said, does anyone else see the glow of pregnancy surrounding Princess Beatrice? Well, I had seen the glow, but I assumed it was just sweat, my dear. But you managed to see and recognise the glow of pregnancy, and I kept it in my mind. Thought I'd look out for it. Well, it kind of slipped my mind, but until today. So marvellous news, another grandchild for Fergie, and of course for Prince Andrew. So that's at least something to keep him occupied for a few hours every day. But as I alluded to a moment ago, a mystery of my own has been solved, following on from my Tip Jar Corner broadcast a couple of days ago, where I showed you this watercolour illustration that I'd purchased, normally comes framed, and I showed you the indecipherable scrawl at the side of it and asked if any of you might know anything about it. I really didn't think that I would ever be able to uncover the mystery of who drew this. The mystery has been solved. The riddle has been answered by you. And all it took was one fruit in the basket. Forgive me if I missed anyone else's comment. I did do a little search, but from what I can tell, just one person managed to solve the riddle. Honestly, it has really tickled me, because I would have gone to the grave not knowing anything about the artist. Now I know, yes I do. I'll flash the artist's name up on the screen just for a few more moments. Pause it if you wish to play the game and see if you can unravel the mystery before we proceed. Give you a couple of seconds to pause it. I think the closest guess I could get to it was Scrap P. Daring or Herring, something along those lines. Thank you very much, CB, who says, River, I believe the first one is Drago Mario. It's actually Marin. Predrag Cherina. Drago Cherina. Forgive my pronunciation. The signature you showed looks like his name. I just did a little online research after figuring out what the signature you showed might be. My cursive is impossible to read, so that definitely helped me decipher some of his writing. So is mine, my dear. That's why I'm always struggling over my own notes here. can barely read my own writing. It is so gratifying and so surprising to have been furnished with an answer to my riddle, my dears. I honestly assumed that this was some gift between friends, an unknown artist, just a regular person doing a drawing. But Drago, Cherina, actually I think it would be Cherina. Drago Cherina was born 1949, so that makes him 75, 76 years old, and he still lives and breathes. He is a Croatian sculpting artist, and he lived in England for a while. He assisted Henry Moore, and he worked extensively in Australia. There are large works of his sculptures, very large works throughout New South Wales and Sydney, some of you might be familiar with. Not especially to my taste, I've got to tell you. But an elusive character. He was rather harder to track down his work and his life in recent years. Sort of went quiet, but then it appears that he has become rather popular in China and Taiwan, and he moved there. And I think he lives there now, and he popped up on various Tics and Tocs. There were some various fan accounts, what looked like popping up. And when you look back over his life, there were glamorous moments. He was photographed with Miss Philippines, and there were a selection of nudes, drawings with, again, a saucy element like my one. Nothing too explicit. Actually, there was one which is very explicit and showing a moment of coitus, but somewhat tastefully done. I cannot show those here, of course, my dear. You can get Googling. But, I still can't work out if my particular illustration is part of a leaf of a book. It became a drawing for one of his books, so I'll still be looking out for that. But such a joy for me to solve the mystery. So I'd like to thank that sleuth. Folks speak of the world of AI and chat GTP or whatever it is, but I don't need that, my dear. You guys are my resource. I feel very blessed. You are my resource. Between all of you, we can solve out the world's mysteries, can't we, my dear? We really can. Fabulous. Prince Harry appeared at the Well Child Awards, and it was his 7th appearance in 7 days without the wife by the side. 7 brides for 7 brothers. Not sure what that's got to do with anything, but it's got the number 7. You know what? He spoke very well, I will say. I watched his speech, and he received quite a lot of love from the audience. Very hail fellow, well met. Very hail fellow, well met. And on his throne, he gave an audience, because he's a royal, in case you forgot, or he likes to think of himself as a royal, and behave as if he's still a working royal. The woman who was pawing all over him was Gaby Roslin. Grabby Gaby. Grabby Roslin, as she will henceforth be known. Actually, she is a lovely woman, a really, really lovely woman, and she's rather beloved on these shores as a presenter and such. She's too good for him. Too good for him. But very tactile moment, wasn't it, my dear? Very sensual and an intimate touch to the cheek. Now, to show you that I'm not a complete and utter sour fruit, because it's more difficult to criticise the boy when he's showing up and doing good, isn't it, my dear? To show I'm not a complete and utter sour fruit, that, when it comes to the lives of little children and the differences made in their lives, I'm not partisan, whether it be royalty or Harkle. So just as I donated to Evelina in the past, sort of on our behalf, if you will, on behalf of all of us who adore Catherine and her initiative for Evelina and Great Ormond Street, I made a donation on that behalf in the past. Well, in the same spirit, I've donated 50 quid to Well Child, because it does seem to be really a rather impressive organisation. And it suggests £50 on their website as the cost of a training session. Helps fund a training session, or it could go towards a couple of hours of support. So I've made that donation on our behalf, my dear, on behalf of the broadcast and the fruit basket, but it also might inspire some of you to pop along to the website and do the same. All seems like a very good cause. But, it is all very well and good to show up and do good, as they tell us. And Harry, we would not want to disabuse you of the power that is bestowed upon you by an accident of birth. Not from your natural qualities, an accident of birth. But You disparage and denigrate that ancient lineage and our history. So don't you blame us, my dear. Don't you blame us if we don't care to watch you pouncing about and toddering in like the cock of the walk. Because to be quite honest, it makes most of us queasy. And it made me extremely queasy to see you running around with Jimmy Fallon. There's only one Fallon for me in life, and that's Fallon Carrington Colby. Yes, that's the only Fallon for me. But as for this Jimmy Fallon, I think I've mentioned this before, but he always reminds me of my great Aunt Millie. He really does. And my great Aunt Millie is a beauty, so don't get it twisted. But he's got the same mouth as her. Same mouth. I think Aunt Mill, how are you, dear? And it's Jimmy Fallon. Well, he hasn't got her great humour. He hasn't got her great humour. This was at the Haunted Maze at the Rockefeller Centre. Now, that's a surname, isn't it? Rockefeller. That is a surname that the wife would love. She would love to snatch that one. Her Royal Highness, Meghan Rockefeller. I rock my fella's world. So watch where you put your hands, Grabby Gaby. Oh, one can imagine it. To Nightmares, this expedition was called. Well, Harry does resemble that clown from It, doesn't he? Actually, I think it was the scariest looking thing in there, and I'm sure I saw Meghan popping up. But seriously, on a serious note, I thought the entire thing was incredibly vulgar and childish. He's just turned 40, not 14, and he's running around some ghost train with zombies. But more importantly, I wouldn't mind how childish, how silly, how stupid, if the thing were entertaining, or if it were funny. But can someone please explain to me why this thing is even given house room on television here in America? Why? Why? There's so much talent in America. There's so much experience in broadcasting, and this is what's served up to the nation on a plate. You can't tell me that this is anything other than a tawdry cabaret. I sit impassive at these titans of the American talk shows as canned laughter ripples through my ears, and I despair. I despair, especially when they bring in the spare. Reassuring royalty remained at Craithie Kirk at the weekend for divine service. The king was in town in his tweeds and wearing a tie of red and green. He was accompanied by his consort, Queen Camilla, and one of the Queen's companions, Lady Sarah Keswick, and they waved to all the peasants and paupers that came to admire them. Apparently they haven't given the Duke of Sussex house room. Evidently. Haven't got house room, and neither has Prince William. Sorry, name's not down, not coming in. Wouldn't give him house room. And it's no wonder, because the Prince of Wales has been busy on official royal business. He doesn't have to todger about. He has the natural grand presence of Big Willie. Grand Guillaume. Yes, a true king in waiting. As patron of London Air Ambulance, the Prince of Wales spent time today with the future Sir David Beckham at RAF Northault to see 2 new helicopters for the London Air Ambulance charity, and rare signatures were added to the new emergency aircraft. And no, it doesn't say Willie. It might look a little bit like it, but no, it does not say Willie. William. And they seem to be having a lot of fun in the cockpit. Let's join them in the cockpit. This marks the end of the Up Against Time appeal to fund the helicopters, and Prince William had secured Mr. Beckham's help to promote the appeal, which raised millions and millions. I think someone said 16 million. Yes, a wonderful fund. And he met with the Airbus engineers who were involved with the helicopter's creation and development. Nicola Wildman, can you tell us what your thoughts are about Meet Me at the Lake? Ha! Meet Me at Recce Lake. Do you think it will materialise? Well, she's still there, isn't she, my dear? She's still there waiting at the lake, and nobody's come to meet her. Ha ha! No one's come to meet her at that lake. What I think, Nicola Wildman, is that it is an embarrassment and that it is vulgar to announce and proclaim this gestating oeuvre of creativity with such great fanfare as they keep doing. Every time a great fanfare, the Harkle bugler comes forth and announces and flounces. Great sound and fury signifying nothing. Nada. Ask Lemonada. Remember Lemonada? Knock, 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 who's there? Where did you go? Lemonada, they were trumpeted, weren't they, all those months ago? And we've seen nothing. Where's this new podcast that was announced? All they've got is the archives of archetypes, and everybody loaded that the first time round. Do you understand? There was that. Then this new movie, which one can understand might be in production, but the announcement was over a year ago. They can take many, many years to come to fruition. I understand this, my dears, but why bother making all the announcements to begin with when they evidently hang on tenuous threads that break like Pearl did, or should I say were dumped like Pearl was. And then, of course, there was the vulgar announcement of Arrow, American Riviera Orchard, that was made on the back of Catherine's announcement on the bench. Remember that? And actually, that appears to be the only and very reason why it was announced so very far in advance, because since that moment, that very same time that Catherine announced, suddenly Orchard announces. And several months go by, nothing else. Tumbleweed, tumbleweed. Do you understand why one starts developing a mind of suspicion? Actually, forgive me, my dears, my memory fails me. I don't think it was the cancer announcement that they piggybacked on initially. On this instance, it was the mystery surrounding Catherine's disappearance. It was that weekend when everything went berserk, round about March the 10th, and then they zoomed in round about March the 13th with the big reveal of Archewell, for some reason, the exact same period, within a couple of days, you understand, where the world's press was hounding Catherine and after Catherine. That is when they decided to fanfare. And since then, it's been radio silence. So what does that tell you? It's all down to the timing, isn't it? Zoot allure, zoot allure. You know, I love Judy Garland and I love Mickey Rooney and I love Babes on Broadway and I know every single word. And I've watched them all a million times, my dear. That's what I'm all about. I love it. I'm going to put on a show. Let's put on a show, Mickey or Andy. Let's put on a show. All right, Judy. And, you know, they march arm in arm, and it's all the spirit, the teen spirit of getting everyone together, putting on a show, and making a great big announcement with great big fanfare. I love it, and I fall for it. But I'm afraid it falls completely and utterly flat when it emerges out of the Harkledom, because these are two mid-40s trouncing around, behaving like teenagers, and getting all excited when someone dangles a little carrot in front of them for a project or something they're a neighbour with. You know, it's as if they are Facebook humble bragging without the humbleness, without the humility. This boasting and bragging. Let's get it out there. A little puff piece. Let's do our sunshiny ball sex and deliver the sex to the world, the sex of goodies, the announcements.
Yes, my dear, we're going to tell them, we're going to show them. Yes, I know that my brother will be reading this over breakfast, and Pa, and Wicked Cammy will be reading this over their eggs in the morning, and they're going to say, oh, why did we let Harry get away? Why? And our beautiful daughter-in-law, who's so much more intelligent than Katie. Wait till Katie. Why? Why did we let them get away? So they're going to trumpet themselves up and release all these statements and make all these announcements. And what happens? Nothing! Nothing! We sit here. Nothing happens. Meghan,
stands waiting at the lake. 10 years later, she's still there waiting, staring at the lake, at the reflection, like Narcissus. Well, we all know what happened to him. Diane Knight. Loved the blue suite of jewellery and the last tiara. Some fabulous thrift store finds. Thank you, my dear, for the compliments. Just in response to other questions, the trinkets that I showed you, the little charity shop trinkets, they are from charity shops. The tiaras are not from charity shops. You don't just walk into our thrifting shops and see the tiaras and things like that, my dear. They're all passed to me via my friend Secondhand Susie, as many of you know, and she deals with vintage fairs. She deals with wholesale tat from China. Most of those tiaras are just cheap tat from China, but I think they look fabulous and sparkly and wonderful. So it works for me, my dear. Costume jewellery can be a fabulous thing, but they're nothing highfalutin or fancy, my dear. But they're not from the charity shops. They're sourced for me and scouted out for me by darling Susie. As for Fayed, you say, it is amazing how many victims came out of the woodwork when there is an opportunity to make a few quid. In my day, unwanted attention from a boss would be met with a slap on the face and leaving. You do not get freebies and large sums of cash from your boss without there being a catch. And I read this out, my dear Diane, and a few people made similar comments in relation to what I said about Al-Fayed. And in a way, I take back the few words that I said about Al-Fayed and about Dodi. I think that I spoke a little too glibly and not very mindfully, because it could have done with a bit more nuance. I was speaking, when I spoke about Muhammad Al-Fayed being plainly a monster and a demon, I was speaking as a person with some insight, because I worked at Harrods. So he was my boss. I worked there as a teen during my holidays as I was studying, actually. He was still chairman at that time, and he would march through with his entourage full of self-importance. And even though I was only there briefly, I was part of a sort of inner sanctum, as you will. And I was in a position to hear a lot of talk. Nothing that I could possibly have confirmed or reported on, but a lot of talk. So obviously my mind has been clouded by things that I heard from people that came into very close contact and quarters from him. But for nuance, then I absolutely can imagine, as some of you said in the comments, that there are many reimaginings going on at the moment from many of the women that are coming forward. I'm certainly not saying all of them, and I'm sure no smoke without fire. I don't actually want to look and wade through lots of the muckiness and all the aspersions. I've got no desire to do that. So for now, I state my ignorance, and I state my ignorance on that matter. And when I referred to Dodi as being generally a decent chap, that also came from picking up on the whispers that relations of mine, other people in the know who share whispers and who were chummy with that set back in the day and who knew Dodi, you know, all around Park Lane, all of that. You know, he did have a reputation for fun and as, you know, a party dude, if you will, and being rather charming. So when I said that he was a decent man, I used the wrong word, really, but what I'm saying is that he certainly wasn't a saint by all accounts. I do understand that. So for now, I shall keep an open mind on the matter. We might return to it in future. Thank you for joining me. I'll see you in the next broadcast. I'm also going to leave a link to the Well Child Awards donate button for those of you that might care to send a donation over there. See you next time, my dear. Ta-ra and to the pip.